we did get the news that yesterday, like you said, that he has moved up his commitment date and is now down to two schools, namely Oregon and Texas A&M. Now, what is the story coming out of the past 24 hours? Because I've got my own intel on it, but I'd love to hear what you got.
Yeah, we're pretty much on the same wavelength there. We did hear about it last night. I am not surprised because I think it's been getting to this point where Alabama was a player, USC was an early player. They kind of they did everything they could. Credit to USC, they were the number one class in the country for a reason. I can't believe we didn't top the show off, which is now A&M is number 2 in the 2026 recruiting class rankings.
That's asinine. We don't have to get
for 20%. So I just gotta say it. I know we're not gonna spend that much time on it. It doesn't really mean much, but USC has like 29 commits right now. Like they're not going to get everybody. They're officially out. Alabama is surprising that they are out. I thought they were making good gains, but look, he spoke to one of the On3 reporters today, actually.
Shout out Josh Newberg.
Josh Newberg, yeah, and I actually did a piece on that earlier. But very interesting, right? It was very much these recruits kind of it's very similar in terms of when they talk about, especially defensive back prospects, of their relationships with the head coach and the defensive back coach. So he didn't mention Ishmael Aristide, but there wasn't a reason why he did. But he did mention Jordan Peterson, who Jordan Peterson, remember, did play for A&M, was really one of the, he had one of the better plays in Aggie history. Very hardworking guy. Was not shocked when he actually got a coaching job and became a great recruiter, because recruits love guys like that played at a hard level, had to walk on, or low 2-star recruits or something, had just worked their way onto the field. These guys love that stuff because it just shows you that the fact that he got to this high level at being a position coach at a Power 4 school, you had to work your butt off and you had to do everything to get to that point. So it's aspirational, right? So I'm not surprised. And he said the same for Oregon, mentioning obviously their defensive back coach and their head coach, obviously. And it's going to be interesting. I think that A&M has a huge edge here because he is going to take his official visit this weekend. I see a lot of fans who, maybe that's on us for doing a poor job of updating them, which we did a couple weeks ago, that he had changed his date for his official visit, which made it the last official visit.
Which I want to preface actually maybe a little bit more positive for A&M in the Arrington recruitment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So this official visit, sorry to cut you off, but
no, you're fine, man.
When he switched up his official visits, that was kind of the telling point of, in my mind, where he was kind of looking and trying to see just exactly which of these schools was he trying to get the most out of, in terms of, and this is a kid who just wants to play on the field. He just wants to get out there. Money is a minor factor, even though he is this 5-star corner who has, from what I've seen, top 3 speed in the entire 2026 class. But when he switched up the official visits and now moving up his commitment date, it almost makes me feel a little bit more confident in the A&M side of it to try and land this kid. I mean, this kid is awesome. He is a football player, full stop.
Yeah. He had, I think it was kind of crazy. I think he had pretty subtle stats as a cornerback, but that's just because he was excellent at coverage and he didn't have to tackle as much. I think he had like 29 tackles and 3 pass breakups and an interception. He also had 500 plus yards receiving. So I'm going to be honest, if you were looking for a cornerback, you look for a guy who can also play wide receiver, because he's got those instincts and he knows how to cover guys in man and he understands route running. It's the same as I was used trying to think, Friday Night Lights, the show where the quarterback, I keep forgetting his name. I love that show, but I'm just blanking on the backup quarterback who became a wide receiver later, and he was able to run the routes perfectly. And I always tell people, it's like Caden Johnson, who you mentioned earlier, why him becoming a tight end specifically is very preferential, because he probably knows all the routes, right? He knows how that works, because as a quarterback, You have to know where your tight end is, route running. You have to know where your wide receivers are lined up, what they're going to do. And so having Arrington is by far one of the best athletes in this class. We talked about Edwards being a slam dunk. Well, that's just a freaking 100-0 win over some of the best programs in the country, of landing a guy like this who is an instant impact guy, who they have a plan for him specifically. And that's what he did talk about briefly in the interview, that he does believe that Aristide and Peterson know exactly how they're going to use him as a cornerback. They know exactly where he's going to thrive. A&M secondary was problematic last season, but like we talked on the show, it was the first year with the new staff. Having Mike Elko now call the defensive plays, that's going to change things up. That's going to make these guys play better, changing up the staff, bringing in Lyle Hemphill, who is probably going to be on the staff, I would say probably long-term in terms of fixing these problems. He hasn't had a huge hand as much in recruiting. He's been there, like he's been around, and they know that having a guy like that is just going to help them even more, especially when they get in there, what they can do in year one, going into year 2 and year 3, when they start to really get into the rotation. So again, just from a recruiting standpoint, I think A&M still has the edge. I think that they're going to continue to have that going up to Thursday. I think that Oregon is always going to be a player in the California recruiting area. It's just, that's always been the case. Dan Lanning is a fantastic recruiter. He's barely older than I am. So I get it. He can connect with these guys. He understands that this is a business and you have to develop relationships like we've been talking about with A&M, but it's just different, right? It's just different. I could talk all show about this between a guy like Mike Elko and Dan Lanning outside of age, right? It's just, you're playing in the SEC versus the Big Ten. So where do you want to be challenged more? We talked about that. Give credit to Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, who one of the most confident young men I've ever seen in my life. And he had an interview kind of talking about getting offered to go play in the Big Ten through this offseason, and just saying, well, why would I want to go do that? So I think that's the biggest endorsement of the SEC ever, that Diego Pavia was probably offered a ton of money to go play in the Big Ten for Purdue or somebody like that. But he stayed at Vanderbilt because he loves Vanderbilt. Also, he loves the challenge. So if you're a recruit, you want to play in the SEC, and A&M is your first choice, why not A&M? I mean, honestly. And you're going to be with a roster that is going to be chock full of talent. And we could talk about the cornerback future and the safety rotation, what it's going to look like. But through recruiting, getting guys like Arrington is just going to help build and build and build to the point where you are going to have a championship roster. You have to prove it on the field. But as Elko has said all offseason, we're trying to get NFL level talent. That's going to help us get to the point we want to in terms of getting to the college football playoffs, seeing what we can do there. But it's going to start recruiting. It's going to end in recruiting.